I gave you everything, Zeke. My love, my trust, my father's legacy, and this is how you repay me? I gripped the damning photos in my shaking hands, the glossy images of my husband's infidelity blurring through my tears. It wasn't supposed to be like this. When Zeke and I first met, it was a whirlwind romance. He was charming, ambitious, and innovative, everything I thought I wanted in a partner. My father, the founder of our successful real estate development company, took an immediate liking to him. Zeke joined the company and quickly gained favor, his star rising as a brilliant architect. But as his reputation grew, so did his ego. Late nights, schmoozing clients at fancy dinners and exclusive clubs became the norm. When I expressed my concerns, Zeke dismissed them, claiming I didn't understand the demands of his job. I wanted to believe him, to trust that his heart remained true to me and our daughter, Violet. I was blind. Or maybe I just didn't want to see. The photos in my hands told a different story. There was Zeke, his lips locked with a young interns at a company event. Natalie, her name was, pretty, ambitious, and clearly enamored with my husband. Mom? Violet's voice shook me from my thoughts. What's wrong? I hastily wiped my tears, but it was too late. She'd seen the photos scattered across my desk. It's your father, I managed, my voice breaking. He's been having an affair. Violet's face contorted with anger. What? With who? An intern? Natalie? That bastard! Violet slammed her fist on the desk. You have to confront him, Mom. This can't go on. I shook my head, fear gripping my heart. I can't. The scandal, the company. Your grandfather's health is declining. The stress could kill him. And what about the stress this is causing you? Violet demanded. He doesn't deserve your protection, Mom. Not anymore. Deep down, I knew she was right. But the thought of my carefully constructed world crumbling around me was paralyzing. The sound of the front door opening snapped me back to reality. Zeke was home, no doubt fresh from another late night at the office. I quickly gathered the photos, shoving them into a drawer. Violet glared as Zeke entered the room, his suit impeccable, but the scent of unfamiliar perfume clinging to him like a guilty verdict. What's with the long faces? He asked, his charm now seeming so false, so hollow. Before I could respond, Violet stepped forward, her eyes blazing with fury. How could you, Dad? How could you cheat on Mom, on our family, with some intern? Zeke's eyes widened, darting to me in panic. Stella, I can explain, but I held up a hand, silencing him. The pain in my heart had crystallized into something harder, sharper. Determination. No more lies, Zeke, I said coldly. No more excuses. You've made your choice. Now you'll face the consequences. I didn't know what those consequences would be yet, but one thing was certain. I would not let this man destroy everything my father had built, everything I had worked so hard to protect, even if it meant destroying him first. The next morning, I arrived at the office early, my mind still reeling from the revelation of Zeke's betrayal. As I walked through the halls, I overheard a conversation that stopped me in my tracks. I'm telling you, man, Zeke's got it made, a male colleague said. That new intern, Natalie, she's practically eating out of his hand. He said she's the reason he landed the Johnsons' project. Laughter echoed from the room. I bet she is. I heard they have a special bond, if you know what I mean. Rage boiled inside me. Not only was Zeke cheating, but he was using his affair to advance his career. I fought the urge to storm in and confront him, knowing I needed to play this smart. My phone buzzed with a text from Violet. Skipped school, following Dad, caught him bringing Natalie to the lake house, taking pictures now. My heart sank. The lake house was our family's sanctuary, a place filled with cherished memories. How dare he taint it with his sordid affair? I quickly replied, telling Violet to be careful and come home immediately. Then, I made a decision. If Zeke wanted to play dirty, I'd dig up every speck of dirt on his precious Natalie. A few phone calls later, I had my answer. Natalie had a history of seducing married men at her previous jobs, using her charm to extract money, gifts, and favors. She was nothing but a gold-digging homewrecker. As I sat fuming in my office, my secretary knocked on the door, her face ashen. Mrs. Delaney, I'm so sorry. It's your father. He's had a heart attack. The world tilted beneath my feet. What? Is he? He's alive, but in critical condition. Your mother is with him at the hospital. I rushed to the hospital, my thoughts a tangled mess of grief, anger, and fear. When I arrived, my mother was in tears, clutching my father's hand as he lay unconscious, hooked up to beeping machines. Zeke burst in moments later, his face a mask of concern. Stella, I came as soon as I heard. How is he? I couldn't even look at him, my disgust threatening to overwhelm me. Like you care. You're probably just worried about your precious promotion. How can you say that? Zeke had the audacity to sound wounded. Your father is like a second dad to me. I love him. Spare me the act, Zeke. I know about Natalie. I know everything. Before he could respond, the doctor entered, his expression grim. I'm sorry, but Mr. Delaney has passed away. We did everything we could. The room spun. I collapsed into a chair, my mother's wails echoing in my ears. Zeke tried to embrace me, but I shoved him away, repulsed by his touch. The funeral was a blur. Zeke played the role of the grieving son-in-law to perfection, shaking hands and accepting condolences, but I caught him whispering to Natalie, their heads bent together conspiratorially. After the service, the family lawyer gathered us for the reading of the will. To everyone's shock, my father had named me the sole heir and CEO of the company. Zeke's face contorted with rage, his mask slipping. Violet squeezed my hand, her voice low. I told Grandpa about Zeke's cheating before he died. He wanted to make sure we were protected. Zeke cornered me after the lawyer left, his eyes blazing. This is absurd, Stella. You know I'm the one who should be running the company. You're not cut out for this. I stood my ground, drawing strength from my daughter's love and my father's trust. The only thing absurd here is your behavior, Zeke. You've lied, cheated, and betrayed this family. You're not fit to lead a dog on a leash, let alone this company. You're making a huge mistake, Stella, Zeke snarled. If you don't give me control, I'll ruin you. I'll destroy everything you hold dear. I looked him straight in the eye, my resolve unwavering. Bring it on, Zeke. You have no idea what I'm capable of. You want a war? You've got one. The first order of business was to remove Zeke from the company. I had him escorted from the building, his access revoked, and his email account terminated. The look of shock and fury on his face as security led him out was a small victory, but I knew it was only the beginning. Next, I called an emergency board meeting. Armed with the evidence of Zeke's affair and unethical business practices, I laid bare his betrayal. The board was stunned, but unanimously voted to support my decision to fire him. I thought I'd feel a sense of triumph, but all I felt was a hollow ache in my chest. The man I had loved, the father of my child, was nothing but a snake in the grass. Zeke wasted no time retaliating. He started calling our clients, spinning tales of my incompetence and instability. He even went to the media, painting me as a scorned, vengeful wife who couldn't handle the pressure of running a company. But his most vicious move came in the form of a lawsuit. Natalie, the intern he'd been sleeping with, filed a sexual harassment claim against the company. She alleged that I had created a toxic work environment out of jealousy and spite. I was served the papers in the middle of a client meeting. As I read the lurid accusations, my stomach churned with rage and disgust. This is all lies, I said through gritted teeth. Zeke is behind this. He's using her to get back at me. My lawyer, a fierce woman named Olivia, placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. We'll fight this, Stella. Zeke and Natalie won't get away with it. But the damage was done. The lawsuit hit the news, and suddenly, our company was synonymous with scandal. Clients started pulling their projects, investors backed out, and our stock prices plummeted. I was drowning, barely keeping my head above water as I fought to save my father's legacy. Violet, my rock through it all, refused to let me give up. We'll find a way to beat them, Mom, she said, her eyes blazing with determination. We just need to fight fire with fire. Late one night, as I pored over legal documents and financial reports, Violet burst into my home office. Mom, look what I found. She thrust her phone into my hands, a series of texts displayed on the screen. I read them quickly, my heart pounding. They were messages between Zeke and Natalie detailing their plan to take over the company and force me out. I hacked into Dad's old phone, Violet explained. He never changed his password. There's more, Mom. Natalie's pregnant. She's claiming it's Dad's baby, but I think it's all part of their scheme. I felt sick to my stomach. Zeke's cruelty knew no bounds. He was willing to use an innocent child as a pawn in his twisted game. We need to expose them, I said, my voice shaking with anger. We need to show the world what kind of monsters they really are. Violet nodded, a fierce smile on her face. I have an idea. The annual company gala is coming up. What if we confront them there, in front of everyone? We can present the evidence, expose their lies, and watch them crash and burn. It was a risky plan, but I was out of options. Zeke and Natalie had backed me into a corner, and I was ready to come out swinging. "Let's do it," I said, my resolve hardening. "Let's take those bastards down." As I hugged my daughter close, I felt a flicker of hope amidst the darkness. Zeke had underestimated me, underestimated the strength of a mother's love and the power of the truth. He wanted a war. He was about to get one hell of a battle. The night of the gala arrived, and I was a bundle of nerves. Violet and I had spent weeks gathering evidence, piecing together the sordid details of Zeke and Natalie's scheme. We had bank statements, recorded conversations, and a damning trail of emails that painted a clear picture of their deceit. I smoothed my hands over my dress, a sleek black number that made me feel powerful, armored. Violet squeezed my hand as we entered the ballroom, the glittering chandeliers and elegant decor, a stark contrast to the ugliness we were about to expose. Zeke was holding court in the center of the room, Natalie draped on his arm like a trophy. They were all smiles and charm, working the crowd with their lies and manipulation. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation. With Violet by my side, I approached the stage, the evidence clutched tightly in my hands. "Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please?" My voice rang out over the din of conversation, and the room fell silent. Zeke's eyes narrowed as he saw me, his jaw clenching with anger. Natalie's smile faltered, a flicker of fear crossing her face. "I have something important to share with all of you tonight," I continued, my heart pounding in my chest. "The truth about Zeke Delaney and Natalie Summers." I held up the stack of documents, my hands shaking slightly. "These are records of their affair, their conspiracy to defraud this company and steal my family's legacy. They've been lying to all of us, manipulating and scheming for their own gain." The room erupted in gasps and murmurs. Zeke's face turned an ugly shade of red, his fists clenched at his sides. "This is ridiculous, Stella," he spat. "You're just a bitter, jealous woman who can't handle the fact that I've moved on. Those documents are forgeries, lies." Natalie nodded, her eyes wide with false innocence. "She's crazy. I'm just an intern. I would never do something like this." But I wasn't finished. "There's more," I said, my voice steady. "Natalie is pregnant. She's been claiming the baby is Zeke's, using it as leverage to force me out of the company." Zeke blanched, his mouth falling open in shock. Natalie's hand flew to her stomach, her eyes darting around the room in panic. "That's not true!" Zeke shouted, his voice cracking. "The baby is mine. Stella is just trying to turn everyone against me." I shook my head, a mirthless smile on my face. "Oh, really? Then how do you explain these text messages detailing your plans to use the pregnancy to extort money from multiple men?" I held up my phone, the damning texts displayed on the screen. The crowd gasped, their faces a mix of shock and disgust. "And as for the paternity of the baby," Violet chimed in, "we have DNA test results proving that Zeke is not the father. Natalie has been playing all of you, just like she played my dad." The room exploded into chaos. Zeke lunged for me, his face contorted with rage, but security held him back. Natalie collapsed to the floor, sobbing and wailing about how she'd been set up. The police arrived moments later, handcuffs at the ready. As they led Zeke and Natalie away, reading them their rights, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. The truth had prevailed, and my father's legacy was safe. I turned to Violet, tears streaming down my face. "We did it, baby. We won." She hugged me tightly, her own tears mingling with mine. "I'm so proud of you, Mom. You're the strongest person I know." As the guests began to disperse, whispering and gossiping about the night's events, I knew that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more battles to fight, more wounds to heal, but for now, I savored the victory, the knowledge that I had faced my demons and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever. Zeke had tried to break me, to shatter everything I held dear. But he had underestimated the power of a woman's resilience, the unbreakable bond of a mother and daughter united against all odds. And that was a mistake he would regret for the rest of his miserable life. The fallout from the gala was immediate and intense. The news of Zeke and Natalie's arrests spread like wildfire, plastered across every newspaper and gossip site in the city. The company was inundated with calls from reporters, investors, and clients demanding answers. I spent hours in meetings with the board, lawyers, and PR teams, trying to control the narrative and minimize the damage. It was exhausting, but I refused to let Zeke's actions destroy everything we had built. Violet was my rock through it all, keeping me focused and grounded. She even took on some of the media responsibilities, giving interviews and statements with a poise and maturity far beyond her years. "You're amazing. You know that?" I told her one evening, as we sat in my office, surrounded by stacks of paperwork. "I couldn't do this without you." She grinned, her eyes sparkling with mischief. "Well, someone has to keep you in line, Mom. Can't have you going all scorned woman on us again." I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks. "I think I'll leave the dramatics to the soap operas from now on." But our moment of levity was short-lived. The next day, I received a call from the prison where Zeke was being held. "Mrs. Delaney, this is Warden Johnson. I'm afraid I have some bad news. Your husband was found dead in his cell this morning. It appears to be a suicide." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. For all his flaws and betrayals, Zeke had once been the love of my life, the father of my child. The thought of him taking his own life, alone and desperate, was almost too much to bear. Violet found me in my room, staring blankly at the wall. "Mom, what's wrong?" I told her the news, my voice hollow and distant. She sat beside me, her arms wrapped around my shoulders as I wept. "I'm so sorry, Mom," she whispered. "I know you loved him, despite everything." I nodded, my tears soaking her shirt. "I did. God help me, I did. But I also hated him for what he did to us, to the company. I don't know how to feel." "You don't have to know," Violet said softly. "You're allowed to grieve, to be angry, to feel however you need to feel. But don't let his choices define you, Mom. You're so much stronger than that." Her words were like a beacon in the darkness, guiding me back to shore. I hugged her tightly, marveling at the incredible young woman she had become. The funeral was a small, somber affair. I stood beside Violet, holding her hand as we watched the casket being lowered into the ground. Natalie was there, her belly swollen with her lies, her face a mask of crocodile tears. I felt a flicker of pity for her, mixed with a simmering rage. She had been a pawn in Zeke's game, but she had also made her own choices, her own mistakes. She would have to live with the consequences, just as I would. As the mourners dispersed, I caught a glimpse of a familiar face in the crowd. It was Olivia, my lawyer, her expression grim. "Stella, I need to talk to you," she said, pulling me aside. "It's about Zeke's death. The police found a note in his cell addressed to you." My heart seized in my chest. "What did it say?" Olivia hesitated, her eyes filled with concern. "He claimed that you drove him to it, that you ruined his life and left him no choice. He's trying to make you responsible, even in death." I felt a white-hot anger surge through me, mingled with a sickening dread. Even from beyond the grave, Zeke was still trying to manipulate me, to twist the truth to suit his own ends. "He's not going to win, Olivia," I said, my voice low and fierce. "I won't let him destroy me, not anymore. I'm going to fight back, with everything I have." Olivia nodded, a glimmer of admiration in her eyes. "I know you will, Stella, and I'll be right there beside you, every step of the way." As I walked away from the cemetery, Violet's hand clasped tightly in mine. I knew that the battle was far from over. Zeke's final act of cruelty had opened up a new front in the war, one that threatened to consume me from the inside out. But I also knew that I had the strength, the courage, and the love to prevail. I had my daughter, my company, and the truth on my side. And that was a force that even death itself could not defeat. 1 year later, I stood at the podium addressing a room full of journalists and industry leaders. The company had not only survived the scandal, but thrived under my leadership. We had expanded into new markets, taken on innovative projects, and cemented our reputation as a force to be reckoned with. But the road to recovery had been long and painful. In the wake of Zeke's death and the revelation of his final cruel message, I had been besieged by media attacks and legal challenges. Natalie, desperate to save herself, had tried to paint me as a ruthless, vindictive woman who had driven her poor, innocent lover to suicide. It was a narrative that some were all too eager to believe. I faced accusations, investigations, and even death threats from those who bought into Zeke and Natalie's lies. But I refused to back down. With Violet and Olivia by my side, I fought back against every false claim, every attempt to smear my name and my company. We dug deeper into Zeke and Natalie's past, uncovering a trail of deception and manipulation that stretched back years. We found other women Zeke had targeted, other companies he had tried to infiltrate and destroy. We exposed Natalie's history of extortion and fraud, revealing the true depths of her cruelty and greed. Slowly but surely, the tide began to turn. The media started to question Natalie's credibility, to see through the cracks in her story. The legal challenges against me were dismissed, one by one, as the evidence of my innocence mounted. And then, the final blow. Natalie's web of lies unraveled completely when it was revealed that the child she had claimed was Zeke's had actually been fathered by another married man she had been scheming against. She was arrested and charged with multiple counts of fraud and extortion. As I watched her being led away in handcuffs, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. She had thought she could destroy me, could use my pain and grief as a weapon against me. But she had underestimated the strength of a woman who had already lost everything and survived. Violet, now a successful artist in her own right, had channeled her own pain and anger into her work. Her pieces, raw and powerful, had garnered critical acclaim and sparked important conversations about toxic masculinity and the resilience of women. "I'm so proud of you, Violet," I told her, as we celebrated her latest exhibition. "You've taken the darkest moments of our lives and turned them into something beautiful, something meaningful." She hugged me tightly, her eyes shining with tears. "I learned from the best, Mom. You showed me what it means to be strong, to fight for what's right, no matter the cost." I smiled, feeling a sense of peace and purpose that had eluded me for so long. "We've both come so far, haven't we? Sometimes I can hardly believe it." "Believe it, Mom," Violet said, her voice filled with conviction. "We're survivors, you and me. We're unbreakable." As I looked out over the city skyline, the sun setting in a blaze of orange and gold, I knew she was right. Zeke and Natalie had tried to break me, to shatter my world into a million pieces. But I had taken those pieces and rebuilt myself, stronger and more resilient than ever before. I had my daughter, my company, and the knowledge that I had faced the worst that life could throw at me and emerged victorious. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had claimed her power and her truth. And I knew, with a certainty that burned bright in my soul, that nothing and no one could ever take that away from me again. As I stepped down from the podium to a standing ovation, I caught Violet's eye in the crowd. She grinned at me, her fist raised in a gesture of solidarity and triumph. "Here's to the future, Mom," she mouthed, her eyes sparkling with pride and love. I raised my own fist in return, feeling a rush of gratitude and joy that brought tears to my eyes. Here's to the future indeed, a future that we had fought for, that we had earned, that we had claimed as our own. A future that belonged to us and us alone. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with tension and anticipation. Zeke and Natalie sat at the defendant's table, their faces pale and drawn. They had been denied bail, deemed a flight risk after the extent of their crimes had been revealed. I sat in the front row, Violet and Olivia beside me. We had spent months preparing for this moment, gathering evidence and testimony, yet building an airtight case against the two people who had nearly destroyed our lives. As the judge entered the room, I felt a shiver run down my spine. This was it, the moment of truth, the final reckoning. The prosecutor, a sharp-eyed woman named Valerie, laid out the case against Zeke and Natalie with ruthless efficiency. She detailed their schemes, their lies, their callous disregard for the lives they had ruined. She called witness after witness, each one painting a damning picture of greed, manipulation, and betrayal. Former employees, clients, even some of Natalie's other victims, they all took the stand, their voices shaking with anger and pain. And then it was my turn. As I walked to the witness box, I felt a rush of nerves and adrenaline, but I also felt a sense of clarity, a deep conviction in the truth of my words. I told my story from the beginning, the love, the trust, the dreams that Zeke and I had shared, the slow, insidious unraveling of our marriage as his ego and ambition consumed him, the devastating discovery of his affair, his betrayal, his cruelty. I spoke of the battle to save my company, my father's legacy, from their clutches, the lies, the smears, the legal challenges that had nearly broken me. But I also spoke of the strength I had found in my daughter, in my friends, in the power of the truth. As I finished my testimony, I looked directly at Zeke and Natalie, my eyes blazing with a fierce, righteous anger. "You thought you could destroy me," I said, my voice ringing out clear and strong. "You thought you could take everything I had, everything I loved, and crush it beneath your feet. But you were wrong." Zeke's face twisted with rage. His fists clenched at his sides. Natalie's eyes darted around the room, searching for an escape, a way out. "I am not the weak, broken woman you thought I was," I continued, my voice rising with each word. "I am a survivor, a fighter, a mother who would move heaven and earth to protect her child, and I will not rest until justice is served, until you pay for every last one of your crimes." The courtroom erupted in applause, the sound washing over me like a wave. I looked over at Violet, tears streaming down her face, her eyes shining with pride and love. The judge called for order, his gavel banging against the bench. And then, the moment we had all been waiting for. In the case of the state versus Ezekiel Delaney and Natalie Summers, on the charges of fraud, embezzlement, and conspiracy, the jury finds the defendants guilty on all counts. The words hit me like a thunderbolt, a shock of joy and relief that brought me to my knees. Violet and Olivia were there in an instant, their arms around me, their tears mingling with my own. I watched as Zeke and Natalie were led away in handcuffs, their faces contorted with shock and disbelief. They had thought themselves invincible, untouchable, above the law and the consequences of their actions. But they had been wrong. They had underestimated the power of justice, the strength of a woman's will, the unbreakable bond of a mother and daughter united against all odds. As I walked out of the courtroom, my head held high, my heart filled with a fierce, unshakable joy, I knew that this was only the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more battles to fight, more wounds to heal. But I also knew that I had the strength, the courage, and the love to face them all. I had my daughter, my company, and the knowledge that I had faced the worst that life could throw at me and emerged victorious. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had claimed her power and her truth. And nothing, not even the darkest of demons, could ever take that away from me again. 5 years later, I stood on the balcony of my new office, overlooking the city skyline. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow over the buildings and streets below. It was a moment of quiet reflection, a chance to take stock of how far I had come. The company had thrived under my leadership, growing and expanding in ways I had never dreamed possible. We had taken on new challenges, new projects, new frontiers, and emerged stronger and more successful than ever before. But it wasn't just the business that had flourished. Violet had blossomed into an incredible young woman, her artistic talent and passion taking her to new heights. She had just opened her first solo exhibition, a stunning collection of pieces that explored themes of resilience, healing, and the power of the human spirit. As I looked out over the city, I felt a sense of peace and contentment that had eluded me for so long. The wounds of the past had healed, the scars faded into a distant memory. I had found a new sense of purpose, a new lease on life, a new reason to wake up every morning with a smile on my face. And yet I knew that I could never forget the lessons I had learned, the battles I had fought, the strength I had found within myself. Those experiences had shaped me, molded me into the woman I was today. A woman who knew her own worth, her own power, her own unbreakable spirit. A knock on the door startled me from my thoughts. I turned to see Olivia, a smile on her face, a file in her hand. "Sorry to interrupt, Stella, but I thought you should see this," she said, handing me the file. I opened it, my eyes scanning the pages, my heart skipping a beat. It was a report from the parole board detailing Zeke and Natalie's latest hearing. "They were denied," Olivia said softly. "The board cited their lack of remorse as their continued attempts to manipulate and deceive. They'll be staying behind bars for a long time to come." I felt a rush of emotions, relief, sadness, a twinge of pity for the broken, twisted souls they had become. But I also felt a sense of closure, a final chapter in the story of our shared past. "Thank you, Olivia," I said, my voice steady and strong, "for everything you've done, for standing by me through it all. I couldn't have made it without you." She smiled, her eyes shining with warmth and affection. "You give yourself too little credit, Stella. You're the strongest, most resilient person I know. You've overcome more than most people could even imagine." I hugged her, feeling a rush of gratitude and love for this woman who had been my rock, my anchor, my unwavering supporter through the darkest of times. As she left the office, I turned back to the balcony, my eyes drawn to a small framed photo on the wall. It was a picture of my father, his face beaming with pride and joy, his arm around a much younger version of myself. I felt a pang of grief, a moment of longing for the man who had been my guiding light, my North Star, my constant source of love and support. But I also felt a sense of deep, abiding gratitude for the legacy he had left me, the values he had instilled in me, the strength he had helped me find within myself. "I miss you, Dad," I whispered, my fingers tracing the outline of his face. "But I know you're always with me, always watching over me. And I promise I'll make you proud. I'll honor your memory, every single day." As I stepped back from the photo, I felt a sense of renewed purpose, a fire burning bright in my heart. I had been through hell and back, had faced the worst that life could throw at me, and emerged stronger, wiser, and more determined than ever before. I was a survivor, a fighter, a woman who had claimed her power and her truth, and I knew, with a certainty that blazed like the sun, that nothing could ever hold me back, ever again. I smiled, my eyes fixed on the horizon, my heart filled with hope and possibility. The future was mine, and I was ready to face it, head on, with all the strength and courage of a true warrior.